of trivia I heard once. During the heyday of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the 1980s, polyhedral dice were really difficult to find in Japan. So for that reason, Dungeons & Dragons players of Japan converted the game to run on D6s instead. Now, with that in mind, and the fact that Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is known as the Throwback Edition, I wanted to explore what would happen if you converted that game into a 3D6 game. At first, it might seem a little strange to want to remove the iconic tabletop gaming dice from the iconic tabletop role-playing game, especially since anybody who could get their hands on a copy of D&D likely has access to polyhedral dice, or a dice rolling program at least. However, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is also sometimes described as the modular edition, since many of the rules are stressed as being optional now. So my intention here is simply to give another flavor of 5th edition to everybody. Changing from d20 to 3d6 is gonna cause a lot of changes to the game. The most notable of these changes is that it's less likely you'll roll high, since a trio of d6s will more than likely wind up adding to 10, as opposed to the d20 where 10 is just as likely as any other number. I could go on about the mathematics behind this, but I'm not the first to suggest this sort of change. I'm gonna include some links in the description where other people have talked about how a 3d6 differs from a d20. The long and short of it, though, is that it'll make slight changes in your power more noticeable. It'll also make diversifying your character somewhat more worthwhile, since there's a little bit of diminishing returns on improving only one aspect of your character. As an example, a Dragonborn, who normally gains a breath attack based on their constitution, that can usually be defended against with dexterity, will have no problem dispatching low dexterity characters, or even average dexterity characters if they focus primarily on constitution. Meanwhile, wizards will notice not many of their opponents can resist their spells after gaining so many points in intelligence, and that raising their intelligence further wouldn't make success for them that much more likely. But a slight increase to, say, their constitution or dexterity, and they'll be drastically more capable of resisting the attacks of others. 18 on a 3d6 doesn't come up as often as 20 on a d20. This means you'll need to handle critical hits differently. Otherwise, it's a giant nerf to half-orcs and champion fighters. I'm gonna borrow something I read about in the hypertext d20 SRD. Critical hits in combat when using 3d6 are gonna be 16, 17, or 18, since the likelihood of achieving a 16 or higher with 3d6 is the same as getting a 20 on a d20. For champion fighters, who would crit on a 19 or 20 with a d20, instead crit on a 15 or higher with 3d6. You'll also need a different method for dealing with advantage and disadvantage. For these types of rolls, I would use 4d6. If you have advantage, you drop the lowest from the set. If you have disadvantage, you drop the highest. The last thing I think worth mentioning is this. Don't have players roll for their stats. Instead, go for one of the non-random methods of generating ability scores. This way, they'll either be very average all around, or at least have a few weaknesses to round out their strengths. Naturally, with a change like this, it'll call for a different method of the GM designing challenges. The probability curves are different now. For characters that don't have any particular specialty, some challenges will simply be impossible, since a character with a particular focus might be the only one capable of exploiting any weaknesses of the situation now. To quote Sun Tzu, a surrounded army must be given a way out. When trying out these changes for the first few times, give the players an obvious way out of any sticky situation you might put them in. When I first thought of the idea for this video, I thought I had come up with something original, but it actually turns out that someone had already converted Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition into a 3d6 game. It's actually very similar to everything I've said in this video, so I'll include a link to that in the description below. With all that said though, I am Aaron Dershadel, and I will see you all next time. Be sure to subscribe if you like this video and want to see more. Also, if you know a cool modification to the D&D 5th edition rules, leave it in the comments section. I know I said this earlier, so with that said, I am Aaron Dershadel, and I will see you all next time.